A pleasure to meet all at last, and welcome back to video games that are totally awesome. So, for this particular instance, I'd like to take a bit of a look back at the Sega Genesis. Yeah, this is the console that from 1989 to 1996 had given out some amazing titles that were more than worthy in my collection. At least by simply having them around in more modern consoles of mine, including the PS5 Slim. But other than the Sega Genesis Classics collection, which I had had for some time, there were other instances of me actually getting to play certain Sega Genesis titles on various other pieces of hardware over the years. As you know, I have talked a bit about the Jack-specific plug-and-play toys, which of course included a Sega Genesis version. It mimicked the controller and a miniaturized version of the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive console itself. Just a simple power button, as well as a panel on the back for batteries. And basically, all you had to do was plug in the RCA cables in the correct way, and then you're basically playing a unique variation of Sega Genesis on your TV. 6 games, of course, were included, with mine in particular, including the Ooze, which I have talked about before. So not much to worry about that. There was also Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Columns, Gain Ground, Echo the Dolphin, and Alex Kidd. Yep. So why don't we go ahead and talk a bit about Alex Kidd, the unique story of a young boy whom basically uses the power of rock, paper, scissors to get around town and to where he needs to go. On all of his unique adventures, he utilizes rock, paper, scissors as a way to beat other opponents in special competitions across his planet, and in order to gain certain weapons and vehicles. Yeah, imagine using rock, paper, scissors in order to get everything you could possibly ever want. If I beated everybody in rock, paper, scissors, I could probably be on par with Steve Jobs, Bill Gates. Yeah, I don't need to go there really, don't I? Anyways though, the main gist of the story here is that this game is mainly that of a side-scroller slash platformer. Though it's mostly side-scroller. There's not really much need for platforming in this game, because after all, Alex Kidd does jump rather high. But keep in mind, one-hit deaths are in this game. Yeah, you run into a car, you run into an enemy, you run into whatever you could possibly imagine, and boom, that's all it takes to send Alex into the sky in some sort of, I guess, ghost, we could say. Yeah, that's basically all it is. You touch it and you die, just like that. But no matter, you can use his insane jumping skills to jump on top of the cars and it destroys them, turning them into coins that he can pick up. You can do the same thing with whatever other enemies you come across, even zooming airplanes. Yeah. I almost wonder, if I jumped at an airplane and destroyed it, would I get money out of it? No, we know that's not possible. This is just a perfect example of something that doesn't really make sense, because it's a fantasy world after all. And Alex Kidd being yet another instance of an early release on the Genesis, this came out in '89, of course. It was around the same time when the NES, Sega Master System, as well as TurboGrafx 16 were around. There was also the implementation of other consoles that would come around after some time just as well, including some Atari and PC Engine related stuff. But for 1989, we could say that for another early release of this console in particular, the Sega Genesis, up there with other titles that came around just as well, like Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, Alex Kidd actually was quite a unique adventure to put together into a game. Because after all, like I've said, rock, paper, scissors is one of the main weapons of choice that Alex uses to his advantage. He enters certain competitions and basically he has to pay up a certain fee. It's basically like gambling in a way, but with rock, paper, scissors being his only real way of either getting the win or getting the loss. Basically, there's cheerleaders and a big crowd in each room. And the music itself does change to a somewhat interesting loop, which does allow for us to get a unique chance. Then of course we get to pick whether we want to use rock, paper, or scissors in order to hopefully get the win in. As we know, the rules of rock, paper, scissors is simple. Rock crushes scissors, paper covers rock, and scissors cuts paper. So the rules in that particular sense means you have up to a 33.33333 repeating percent chance of victory here. And sometimes a tie can occur when one of the three symbols matches up. Whether it's paper, scissors, or rock, doesn't really matter. They do allow for you to restart free of charge, but again, the rule states simple. If scissors gets crushed by rock, rock gets covered by paper, or paper gets cut by scissors, then Alex will lose. But the same thing can happen to your opponent. So regardless of what happens, you do get to win a nice grand big prize. And sometimes the prize will also be a physical item. Whether it be a giant pogo stick that Alex can use, or it can be a cycle copter, in which that basically all you got to do is pedal and pedal and pedal to get that thing going around. There's actually an entire level of the game that you do have to use the cycle copter to your own advantage. Though there is also a submersible that Alex can use as well. By participating in these rock, paper, scissors championships, you do get to unlock these different objects and use them to your advantage. There is an inventory screen in which it does show you how many items in particular that you've collected from all these championships. But again, by entering these rock, paper, scissors championships, you do get to earn these different items for free, and mostly just simply paying up for the fees in particular that you enter. And that's basically where the coins come in. By knocking out all these enemies and all these different objects that basically lay out coins or bags of money, you do get the opportunity to enter these championships. But one thing should be taken into consideration here. The higher value the items are, and the more important they are along the way, the higher the fees are. So you do got to take that into account. When facing against all these different enemies in each of the levels that you go through the game, you do need to keep that in mind. A good amount of money is to be kept around for that particular purpose. I'll admit, I haven't really gotten past the 4th level of the game, and that's because it sure did get rather challenging. There's a lot more enemies to face the more that you progress through the game. Appropriately so, because this is a game that's bent on side-scrolling, and at the same time that you gotta use rock, paper, scissors to your advantage in order to gain certain items that you may need along the way, Alex Kidd will also face against tons of enemies that are rather tough. They can be hard to beat by simply jumping at them, or by even using some items in particular that can enhance his capabilities, thereby allowing him to take on tougher enemies. So there's a good amount of things that you have to take into consideration here. Because rather than focus on one thing in particular, which is to take out the enemies and progress to the end of each level, the idea of gaining money in order to gain admittance to these rock, paper, scissors championships and to get a hold of these specific items in particular that Alex can use to his advantage against the enemies in particular that you're trying to defeat, it sure is quite a way to stack two things in one. You got a series of gambling and a series of side-scrolling action blended into one title for 1989. And so, while I can't say much more about the game because I haven't really gotten that much further into it than I did, I'll at least go ahead and give it a good score because it certainly did do something rather innovative for the time. And Sega Genesis was actually known to do a very good amount of things here and there that were pretty different back then. While today, a lot of these things here, including inventory, screens, gambling, and tons of other stuff, could definitely be achieved today with modern gameplay. But for Alex Kidd, I can't really say a whole lot more than what I've already described. So, with that in mind, my overall scoring for Alex Kidd 1989 on Sega Genesis is going to come out to a somewhat decent 7.4 out of 10.1. But still not exactly enough to be considered that great of a title. It's still a good classic for what it is because of the things that it went ahead and did that were quite different from other games back then. But we still can't really get too far on the title. And I know I couldn't get that far on it to begin with, even when I tried the Genesis Classics collections on the PS4. So, with that in mind, I don't have that much more to say about this title, but I will have plenty more to say about the next title, which will be coming soon in video games that are totally awesome. So, stick around for that, if you must.